They come with you when you go.
I need you to listen to me, please. Okay, there isn't much time. Now, this is gonna sound very, very strange, and you're not gonna believe me, and I wouldn't believe me either. Okay, and I wish there was more time to explain, but if you don't come with me right now, you're all going to die.
What the hell was that?
That was death,
It's Grandma. Come to the window.
and it's coming.
We have seen unbelievable shit in this place. Roads that lead nowhere. Monsters that come from the dark. According to Boyd, there are evil fucking trees that trap you in dungeons.
People who were lost. They couldn't escape. She said they were holding on to hope, and when that hope was gone, they held on to each other.
Oh, you don't understand! There's something in the room!
Death predictions. Yes, while the show isn't necessarily known for killing off a lot of its characters, when it does kill off its characters, it's pretty impactful. And if the show is sticking to its guns and finishing after 5 seasons, it's very likely we'll get to see even more deaths come season 4. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. We'll start with those who I think are at least safest come season 4. Ethan being the #1 candidate for that, as he's definitely one of the more important characters of the entire series, if not the most. Seeing him be killed off would truly be a shocker, as all these ideas of cycles and incarnations would lead us to believe that he would be next up to take Victor's role, or potentially even the role of the boy in white. So as far as I could tell, Ethan is safe for this season, for sure. Another character I believe is thoroughly safe this season is Jade. Not only does Jade have connections to Frum's past in Christopher and potential future in Frumville's massacre, but he also is the only person actively consistently looking for answers if he's not just overwhelmed with failing. That, and there's no way Frum will kill off its very own Tony Stark before its series officially wraps up. Then we have Kenny. Kenny I'm putting in the safe category, as he kinda just deserves to be safe. My guy has gone through a lot, and he's very resembling of another fan favorite character of mine from another TV series, that being Glenn from The Walking Dead. Both genuinely decent people with a lot of heart and a lot of passion, who are just trying their best to survive a very cruel world they find themselves in. Kenny not only having to endure the same nightmares everyone else does, but also having his own love interest lose interest in him, while he simultaneously loses almost every member of his family. Yet despite all of this, he still does what he can to maintain his composure and be a pillar of the community where he can. Kenny's emotional endurance is what makes me root for him the most out of a lot of the characters within this town. And with him even establishing some sort of new connection with a new character we're getting this season, I just feel it's safe to say Kenny will be making it to season 5. And if he doesn't, now we'll go ahead and move on to people who are less likely to survive this season, but still have a potential chance. Starting off with our main man, Boyd. While he potentially could be a mainstay until the show's final season, Boyd also backed himself into a corner between both the residents of Frumville and his very own family. With his leadership being tested, and Elgin and Acosta potentially raising awareness of Boyd's previous actions, the target on Boyd's back is growing a little bit to an uncomfortable size. Still, he is kind of the main character, so it's par for the course he endures a lot throughout the series. However, his death would leave a lasting ripple effect on the communities. And the same goes for characters like Donna, who is another instrumental leader amongst the residents. While she's been slowly breaking down throughout the series, almost every time a season starts, I expect her to either die or be revealed to no more than she lets up. And with almost every season, things end with her being a seemingly regular person just struggling to deal with this place. But still, with the series coming so close to an end, I feel this would be the season to reveal some of Donna's true past or history if she happens to have any, which could potentially result in her very own demise. Then we have the character of Tabitha. While Tabitha is instrumental to the story, we also know that her survival isn't necessary, as we've seen with her past self in Miranda. With all the talks of cycles and reincarnations, it would be easy to assume Tabitha would follow the same steps as Miranda and die in the same place. But truth is, despite being related to each other, none of these characters are destined to die any particular way. Miranda was only at the bottle tree that night because Victor had told her about Christopher's conversation with the boy in white, who told Christopher to go to the faraway tree as it would help him escape. And if Victor didn't choose to tell his mother about this story, then Miranda wouldn't have gone to find the faraway tree. A faraway tree seemingly only meant for Christopher to go through, as Smiley was waiting right there to sprint right at her, something the monsters do not do. Unless it's to grab Kenny's mom. It is weird how they kind of ran up on her like that. So while Tabitha could die literally any way going forward, her importance to the story could potentially keep her safe. Then we have Fatima, another character I personally really enjoy, who has been traumatized to Kingdom Come, once being a peace-loving hippie and now seemingly going on an aggressive tirade. Fatima's one of those characters that definitely deserves a break after all she's been put through physically. But not only that, think about it from her perspective. She potentially found love and even a family in a place of nightmares, only to potentially lose that entire family and be left to endure these nightmares alone yet again. It's already tough enough to know that there's weird humanoid-looking monsters wandering around out there, but to know you gave birth to one of them and that they could even be killing people, I couldn't even begin to fathom how that would make anyone feel. And it's even possible she will have yet more drama to deal with coming this season, as we barely see her husband Ellis with her in any of these shots. But we'll get to Ellis's character. Either way, I think Fatima should be able to live to the final season, but her character is honestly in a very unpredictable place at the moment. Then we have both Marielle and Christy. Christy, having always been a straightforward support beacon for the community, still raises some suspicions for me, as if you watch my previous videos, you'll see that going into this season, I think the man in yellow will shapeshift or morph into another character, and sort of hide amongst the residents as a mole. And with Christy's narrative place amongst the rest of the residents, it makes a lot of sense for her to be that. But Marielle, on the other hand, has had a very interesting journey, falling back into addiction before even arriving at Fromville. When she does arrive, she's at a pretty low point. See, in Season 1, there was a sense of stability and routine amongst everybody. But when it comes to Season 2, that's when everyone really starts losing control, and they don't even try to do things like have two different lifestyles in both the town and colony house anymore. And with Marielle's time only getting worse, becoming one of the cicada victims, she seems to perfectly clear up after the cicada attack and be at a relatively calm place for the rest of the series, even compared to other cicada victims like both Randall and Julie. A big part of me figured this was because she turned evil in that exact moment, and potentially throughout the rest of Season 3 did evil things like potentially kill Nikki after she was shot, or even potentially poisoning Fatima and altering her pregnancy. Though I do find it interesting if she isn't necessarily evil and has just been pushed to the point where she now is just sort of floating through Fromville and doing whatever she can. All of her emotions and feelings becoming numb to the overwhelming stress and trauma. Then we have the character of Randall. Definitely high up on people's suspect list, as he's a hot-headed and paranoid dude, sure, but not really a malicious person. While he isn't one to avoid confrontation, he also isn't one to avoid doing what's right, as we can see him supporting where he can and showing beneath his tough guy exterior, he tends to genuinely care for others, like even his nephew, who is basically the one that got him sent to Fromville. Some even theorize that Randall is actually the older version of this dweeby monster we see here. And while I doubt this particular theory, there is enough evidence to suggest that he could even be that guy or even the man in yellow, as we still don't have any solid clarification for why out of every person we've seen so far, the monsters leave him alive, as well as the fact that out of all the cicada victims, the cicadas only continue to really bother him. And while all of these questions could warrant him surviving all the way up to the final season, his very aggressive personality, resembling that of a MAGA cultist you tended to disagree with once, could potentially lead to other residents being pushed to their limits and finally taking him out. Unfortunately, despite how much potential Randall does have and all the solid steps he's taken in Season 3, should he backstep in Season 4, I feel he'll solidify himself more as a potential problem for Fromville than a solution. especially if we get some sort of reveal that he is a previous monster or that he is actually the Man in Yellow. But now let's move on to the characters I think are most at risk for dying within season 4 of the series. Starting with the least likely of these final few, that being Julie. Yes, our resident storywalker is actually in quite a bit of danger, as we've seen by the end of season 3. While I don't think we'll see the Julie we followed throughout season 3 die anytime soon, I do believe we could potentially see her inevitable fate or outcome through story walking in the sequence we see of the Man in Yellow post-killing Jim in season 3. See, season 3 started with killing off a character and leaving an emotional impact. And should season 4 start with the future story walking Julie getting killed by the Man in Yellow, this would really only amplify her personal story going forward. And should what her and Ethan run into in these trailer shots at the barn be either her dad or potentially even her very own body from the future, this would really push Julie to keep pursuing story walking and trying to find out more, or if she could even change anything altogether. And us as the audience would be watching with nervousness, as every time she story walks, she could potentially end up going towards the Man in Yellow and her inevitable fate we would see. As I thoroughly believe the Man in Yellow did happen to take Jim's body or storywalking Julie's body and set it up in the barn to freak out the residents of Frumville. But let's move on to another important character, that being Victor. Outside of Ethan, Victor is kind of the most important character in the show. And while I can easily see him surviving until the end, part of me wonders if his death this season could be instrumental in the development of Ethan's character. Still, outside of that, I can't really see Victor dying. And if the show does end in season 5, season 4 would be the opportune time to do it. Victor's dad. Now, if Victor does die, Victor's dad will probably live, and vice versa. But some happen to theorize that Victor's dad was the reason Tabitha was allowed to escape and return in the first place. And while that could be true, there's also a chance Frumville still needs something from him in a more malicious manner. As in, I doubt it's anything good. Still, some of the trailer shots allude to his potential connection with the Man in Yellow, and I'm very curious to see how that goes down. It's very possible that when the Man in Yellow shapeshifts, he could turn into Victor's dad altogether. But another character he could potentially turn into is that of Acosta. And when it comes to Frumville, I'm probably Acosta's biggest defender. In a lot of my videos, I explain as to why, so I won't get into it here, and may even potentially make a full video on it in the future. But either way, when it comes to season 3, I truly believe Acosta did nothing wrong or worse than anybody else in Frumville. However, things could potentially change for her come season 3. As like I said, the Man in Yellow seems to be morphing into something else within this trailer, and if the hair isn't white like Victor's dad, it could potentially be blonde like Acosta's, or even Marielle's, I guess. And even if she doesn't turn out to be a mole, she still has a lot of beef set up between her and Boyd. So should someone in Frumville just not see her as a threat and try to silently get rid of her, I would find it interesting if her and Boyd's rivalry eventually heated up to the point where his aggressive attitude towards her results in the residents of Frumville losing their faith in Boyd, which would only be made that much more dramatic if Boyd's aggression and suspicion towards Acosta was later proven right with her being taken over by the Man in Yellow. But now let's move on to the character of Elgin. If you saw my theory about how Elgin could start a Civil War video, then you'll have already seen most of my theories for where his character could go come season 4. Elgin essentially has a big target on his back, especially after what he did to Fatima. That being said, he could also garner sympathy from the residents, as everyone is aware people can be manipulated by paranormal entities. And technically, everything Elgin said was true outside of actually escaping, as he promised Fatima would be fine and that their baby would live. And technically, both those things did happen, though it does seem Elgin isn't very considerate of people's potential emotional issues or trauma. We will have to see if any of the Elgin theories are close to being right throughout this season, as his only real hope is that Smiley somehow does lead everyone to their escape. But it's also possible he will become enemy number 1 of Frumville, potentially getting violent or even killed by another character out of revenge for Fatima. And who would this other character be? That would of course be Ellis, my number 1 suspect for death predictions coming into season 4. Ellis is a character I personally really enjoy, and while some complain about almost every decision he makes as it's never really an attempt to escape, it would take a lot more than a character simply trying to live in peace for me to consider them annoying, as I've sat through some of the most intolerable sons and daughters of television. To me, Ellis seems to be loved and appreciated by the whole town, as like his father, he is very supportive and hardworking for everybody he's near, maintaining a good relationship with almost everyone except for Kenny, who may have some lingering jealousy or daddy issues involving Boyd. I'm not actually quite sure why they beef so much, but I do hope to see their beef established even further coming season 4. But why is it that Ellis is at the top of my list for death predictions? Well, the main evidence I have is that narratively, his character is very fitting for causing a lot of ripple effects with his death, as he not only has a lot of connections to the residents, but also the main characters. While I originally thought at some point Ellis within season 4 would do something like kill Elgin by drowning him in the pond at Fromville, I do wonder now, with some of the shots we've seen of the trailer, if he'll start off the season being a relatively good dude, being supportive of those around him and trying to help where he can. And if that is the case, I believe this will lead him to joining whatever expedition crew leaves to that strange village outside of Fromville. The same village we see eventually attacked by giant killer puppets, which could be the very moment that Ellis loses his life. But still, why would it be fitting for Ellis to even die at this point? Well, like with other characters like Glenn from The Walking Dead, at this point in the story, he's sort of become a side piece. Almost everything his character does revolves around either Fatima or his dad, with no real agency or dramatic things going on with him individually. And while you hate to see it, it's a pretty common narrative trope that when there's two characters in a relationship, the character with the less agency is usually killed off to develop the other character a little bit more. And with the shots we see of Fatima this trailer and Ellis barely being involved, coupled with the fact that she seems extremely angry and upset, I do believe that Ellis could potentially lose his life trying to do something good, and resulting in Fatima further spiraling downwards and becoming an angry version of herself. Though she doesn't really need Ellis's death to push her down this spiral at this point in the story. She's endured quite a bit. But man, if Fromville also takes her husband away, I don't think she will ever be the same. And that's it for all the characters. I can't really think of any more I could cover. I'm pretty sure I got them all, except... Oh gosh, what have I done? I forgot the most important character of them all. A character that, should they appear this season, will finally solve one of the biggest mysteries of the entire series. And that character is, of course, Clara.
What?
Yes, Clara, a seemingly random and kind resident who appears from time to time and can be easily seen as a persistent extra. The only problem? She's too suspicious. For one, she's one of the first people to notice an oncoming storm when they are setting up the radio tower. And she also tends to have some very weird interactions with Jade. Like how, after the radio tower failed, out of all people, she came to him expecting that he would get right back to solving things, with Jade instead just straight up giving up and smoking a J. Only she hasn't really pushed any other characters like this, and she seems extremely disappointed with Jade's decision here. And what else do we see as she's literally walking away from him? The bloody ritual symbol that pushes Jade even more throughout the series. We also later see her standing right behind Elgin, where the kimono woman also happens to appear within the same sequence. And even later than that, when the entire town is at the diner for a very important town meeting, we see Julie make her way to Colony House and run into only two people there, being Elgin, who is straight up ready to body her on sight, and Clara, who happens to be leaving Elgin in that very same moment. With other people's comparisons to her losing her eye and being sort of like an Odin figure and watching over the residents of Fromville, and maybe more subtly guiding them to where they need to go, it's possible she could be helping maintain this entire world or know more about it than she lets on. And there are even some theories that are a little more tinfoily, with some believing that Clara could be a character we've already seen so far amongst the series, with Clara potentially being an older version of past characters we've seen, like that of Eloise. But we'll have to wait until season 4 officially drops to see if they even bring the actor back. But if they do, keep your eye out for every single word of dialogue or background instance going on with her character. That being said, I want to know what your predictions are. Who do you think will survive this season, and who will inevitably die? Should the show stop at season 5 like it originally intended to? Or, with higher and higher viewership, should they try to push out the story a little bit more to really explain a lot of these mysteries? Personally, I like when stories have a nice cohesive start and ending, and pushing it out could really risk its narrative consistency. But that's just one Mud's opinion, and I want to hear yours. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to check out some other From videos, and if you have any shows you'd want to see me cover, feel free to let me know down below. Otherwise, have a good rest of your day, and remember, if you see a tree on the road, just walk over it and keep walking.
Okay, let's start with the tree you saw in the road.
She said it was a place that was everywhere, but you couldn't find it if you tried.
I always thought the town was the worst part. And then I went through the tree.
See, you were lucky. The sun was still in the sky when you got here. People came to help. Not everybody gets that. Those things out there, they like to hunt. They like to play.
Everybody here just talks about how afraid they are of dying. They're coming. I don't think that's the worst thing that can happen to you here.
There's darkness in the forest. Nightmares you can't even begin to imagine.
It's all just a dream.
Things we were never meant to see. Things that...
Said this place couldn't break me. You don't fucking break me! That's what you said. Do you remember that, boy?
We don't have time for it. You think those things that come out of the forest at night did this? They're just the tip of the spear.
You can't go to sleep. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are you listening to me? The talisman will not protect you. There is nowhere that you are safe. No. Tonight, tomorrow, every one of you is going to die.
That was a hell of a song. Knowledge comes with cost.